I am sitting here with the one and only founder of Wikipedia, Jimmy Wales. Jimmy Wales, now you started something that has been huge. It's actually, I Wikipedia'd. Now it's its own verb. Talk to me sort of about how you got started and the inception of Wikipedia.
Well, I was watching the growth of the free software movement, or open source software as most people know it, and seeing groups of programmers coming together online to create really amazing software. A lot of people may not realize that most of the software that really runs the internet, things like Linux, Apache, Perl, PHP, MySQL, this is all open source software that's largely written by volunteers working together online. And I realized that this kind of collaboration wouldn't be just about software. That with the internet, everybody could come together and create things together, but we just needed the tools to be able to do it. So that was the original thinking around it. And then when I had the idea for a free encyclopedia written, in all the languages of the world for everybody, I got completely obsessed with the idea, and that's how I really got started working on it.
Now, you were previously a trader.
That's right.
Were you working on this on the side, or how did it come about for you personally, your personal journey to actually execute Wikipedia?
Well, before Wikipedia, I had a project called Nupedia, which was the same vision to create the free encyclopedia for everybody. But I didn't have the idea of wiki. I didn't really know about wikis at the time when we started with Nupedia. And so Nupedia was designed as a very top-down system, very, 7 stages of review, and very intimidating for volunteers, and not very much fun. And it was a failure because of all those reasons. So then Wikipedia was born out of Nupedia, that realization that this very controlled top-down method wasn't working.
I think when you're making the transformation from Nupedia to Wikipedia, you had something like 80 articles in the first year, and that's when you really realized that you needed to open it up to a more, democracy-oriented format. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a lot less than 80, actually. I don't remember the exact number. I think around 24. But yeah, it was really the realization. I started to write an entry myself about. I wanted to write an entry about Robert Merton, who won the Nobel Prize in economics, and I had been an options trader, and I had done academic work and published a paper on option pricing theory, which is what he won the prize for. When I started to write, I just felt very intimidated because they were going to get my work and have it reviewed by 2 prestigious professors and so forth. And I realized that this was no fun for volunteers, and that was when I really said, we really just need to find a way to just open this up, just to let anybody participate. And if the work they do at first isn't good, we can find ways to improve it over time. And that was really the early impetus for the switch from the old Nupedia system to the Wikipedia system.
Obviously, for individuals or autocratic governments that are trying to push a certain agenda, Wikipedia can be hugely influential. What influence do you think that Wikipedia can have in the fight for human rights or for advocates of human rights?
So I think the biggest thing that Wikipedia has to offer for people who are advocates of human rights is not so much as a platform for advocacy, because we try really hard to be neutral, but for the fact that neutral information is very, very powerful, and that one of the ways that human rights are suppressed is through the control of information or the attempt to control information. So the way Wikipedia is designed, people all over the world can edit, so people who are not living in a certain country, who are speaking that language, can edit Wikipedia and keep it up to date, and as a means of communicating with people inside the country. And as a principle, we will not cooperate with censorship. So all around the world, we have no deals, no cooperation with censorship. Of course, we can't prevent it sometimes. People are using filtering technologies that are supplied by, unfortunately, a lot of Western companies to try to control the flow of information. But those technologies are imperfect and inaccurate, and so we know that people are, even if they can't access a certain Wikipedia article, they're emailing it around or they're getting it around in some other way.
Did you see any examples of that in the recent Iranian election?
Yeah, so during the recent election in Iran, there was, there was the election, results were announced, the opposition disagreed with the results, there were protests and riots and lots of different things happened. And I was very curious to know what the Farsi language Wikipedia said about the election. Would it be taken over by extremists on one side or the other, either people in favor of the existing government controlling it or the opposition controlling it? And so I asked someone to translate for me, and turns out it was very, very neutral. It was really very pleasing to me to see that what was being said in the Farsi language was very similar to what was being said in the English language Wikipedia. Just telling just the basic facts. There was an election, the following results were announced, the following statements have been made by the opposition, these analyses have been made, there's been protests, blah, 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 right? Very straightforward, so that if people there were not getting full, accurate information, at least they had a place they could turn where that information was being presented clearly and accurately. I was very happy to see that.
What's your response to the fact that proponents of autocratic governments or individuals are cleaning up entries to their advantage?
Well, they may be trying. They're generally not succeeding. So because everything is very open and transparent in Wikipedia, every past edit is all there, the history is all there, you can see who edited what. And so we do see people coming in who have an agenda, whether typically it's not people who are part of an organized effort. There were a lot of news reports about the CIA editing Wikipedia, but as it turns out, most of their edits were, the big scandal is that the CIA employees are goofing off at work like everybody is, They were editing stuff about popular movies and no agenda whatsoever. That just wasn't really the issue. Of course, we see people who do have an agenda coming in to edit Wikipedia, but they very quickly are met with discussion, dialogue, debate. It's not really possible to sneak into Wikipedia and do something. It's all open. So, and lots of good people monitoring it. And one of the great things about Wikipedia is that we have a core community who care more about neutrality than they care about any particular political view or position. So if somebody comes in with a clear agenda in one direction, this community will push back, even if they tend to agree with that position. They'll say, well, that sounds great and all, but that's not very neutral, right? You really have to strive for neutrality. You have to basically acknowledge the opposition. All of the classic things that you would hope for from good journalism, the community really embraces as very deep values of our approach to the world.
Have you seen increased use from people in countries like China, Iran? What is the trend that you're seeing there?
Well, yeah, I mean, we have seen quite a bit of increase. In China, we're still very far behind. That's because we were banned in China for 3 years, but well, we're available now. And I go to China as often as I can to try to promote Wikipedia and try to get it to be better known there. In Iran, I know we used to be ranked 14th there before the election, and now we're ranked 8th there. I haven't been able to determine if there's any causal relationship there. It's just something I noticed. But to me, it seems like we've had a real uptick in use in Iran. A lot of other places, it's really hard to measure or hard to tell what's going on. Once somebody asked me if, is Wikipedia censored in North Korea? And I said, no, as far as I know, the one guy with the computer can look at anything he wants. So
it's like sort of a non-issue.
Right. So there are places where we're probably not having the kind of impact that we would want, but the cost of preventing people from knowing things today is higher than ever before for authoritarian regimes. If you want to keep people from knowing things, you have to not let them use computers. That's pretty hard on your economy and pretty hard on your people. And so increasingly, even in somewhere like China, where lots and lots of people have computers and where they still do have censorship, even there the censorship is, in my view, it's not so much about controlling the flow of information completely. They know it's imperfect. It's more about chilling effects. It's about making sure that Chinese people understand that certain conversations shouldn't be had in public. That's very powerful. It's very unfortunate, but it also is very different from an era when people could be completely kept in the dark. You know, in Soviet Russia, for example, in the 50s and 60s, people there were very much in the dark. They just didn't know what was going on in the outside world because media was so controlled. The new technologies mean that it's become very, very difficult to impossible to actually control information. No government on earth today can allow people to have access to computers and prevent them from knowing things. Mm-hmm. They can still have a negative impact on the conversation, of course, but we are now in the first stages of an era where censorship is becoming an essentially impossible policy. That's a good thing.
Tell me a little bit about some of the people who are editing Wikipedia from some more difficult or challenging places.
So it's really interesting. I mean, the people who I think are the real heroes of the Wikipedia movement are people who are, in many cases, risking imprisonment, risking their own lives by working in Wikipedia. So we have had one guy in particular who was in Iran who was reported to the police twice for his work in Wikipedia. Even though he wasn't really editing politically sensitive topics or whatever, but it's just something that he had faced that threat, and a lot of the people who are working in Wikipedia are under that kind of threat, and yet they still continue to do so. This one guy in particular told me, you know, he gave his wife my cell phone number so she could call me in case there was any trouble. But he said, he's such a brave guy, actually. He said that, well, there are a lot of problems in Iran, but there's crazy people who call the police and the police ignore them, just like everywhere in the world. So he said, don't worry too much, but he did want to take some precautions, and I think that's really remarkable. We have people in China, in Beijing, who are very active in editing Wikipedia. They are not at legal risk. It's perfectly legal for people in China to get around the firewall and to edit Wikipedia. But they may face some career problems if they're doing something that's not looked on favorably. And again, they're very, very dedicated. And what's interesting is they're dedicated not in the sense of they're dissidents or activists who are trying immediately to get change. They're passionately committed to the idea of free access to knowledge as a more broad concept with no particular political motive, but with that deeper political motive that if people can understand the world, they can change the world. So these are the people who I think are heroes.
Did the gentleman in Iran, did he reach out to you personally before?
Yeah.
And how did he get your cell phone number?
He asked me for it, so I emailed it to him.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I knew of him as a leader of that community already, and well, now he's living in the U.S., and so that's a good thing for him. But yeah, I mean, it's remarkable because it's really, you know, people are always thanking me for my work, but my life is easy. I travel around the world, and people invite me to do interviews and speak at conferences and things like that. That's not very heroic. It's just I'm proud of my work, but there are people out there who, you know, doing something as simple as, you know, writing the history of their country, a fair, neutral, objective history, can be life-threatening. Those are the people we should be really cherishing and honoring.
Do you think that the mainstream media underestimates the intellect of the general population?
Oh, there's no question. There's no question about it. And I think that's one of the fastest things that we're beginning to lose is this old view of the world that there are a handful of thoughtful, intelligent people who should be broadcasting their views to everyone. And that the public is some kind of crazed rabble, easily swayed by popular sort of rhetoric and so forth. And now we have to have a more nuanced understanding. When we see that in China, there are 2 million blogs in China, and they are talking about politics in China. Not always as openly as they would like to be able to, but they are talking about politics. We see ordinary people who get really obsessed with some topic in Wikipedia. I've met you know, a 15-year-old kid who's an expert in some very arcane piece of history, right, that they just became obsessed with. This idea that people are mostly stupid sheep is just, it's falling apart very quickly as we realize when we gave everybody a platform to publish, turns out a lot of them are pretty darn smart. So.